Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to discover their inner vision to design their outer world. Our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Consciously Inspired Minds. I have an amazing guest on today, Lisa Murphy-Taylor. And Lisa is a nurse, craniosacral therapist, Reiki master, mother of 4, and founder of Health in Your Hands, Cincinnati, Ohio's first NeurOptimal Neurofeedback Practitioner. Lisa, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Lisa and I have been working on getting her on the show for months. So this is such a treat. Life is busy, isn't it? Doing the amazing work that she does in the world and serving so many people and raising a family of 6. So we're coming and going and doing all things. So I'm really grateful that you're here today. And, you know, I'm really excited to have Lisa on because we were just chatting before hitting record, and she's very unique in the way that she approaches health and wellness and her expertise. And so we'll get into that, but I'd love to give everybody a formal introduction of Lisa's experience and work-life experience, because she has so much to offer. And as I was reading through the amazing things that Lisa has done, it was just so inspiring to me. And I know that you all will be inspired as well. So as I mentioned, Lisa is a nurse who is trained in neurology. Her first job was at Loyola University in neurology and the neurosurgery unit, where she spent much of her time in the brain trauma ICU. She later moved to Cleveland, Ohio, working as a traveling nurse, eventually working full-time at the Cleveland Clinic under 2 veteran neurologists in their very large outpatient neurology unit. She and her husband eventually moved to Dayton, Ohio, where they started their family, and then later settled in Cincinnati with their 4 children. Lisa began working under Dr. Hal Blatman, finding herself in deeper wonder and curiosity about her medical experience. 10 years ago, Lisa founded Health in Your Hands, focusing on nutrition and neurobehavioral aspects of the human experience from a functional medicine perspective. She continued to follow her curiosity, spending 2 years at a master's level learning human nutrition and functional medicine, trained and certified in neurofeedback, acquired advanced training in craniosacral therapy, became a Reiki master, and most recently trained in homeopathic medicine, adding quantum science methodologies to her repertoire. Lisa, this is extensive experience, my friend. And I can't wait to get into all of it. So beautiful. Thank you so much. Where I always like to start, of course, is a little bit about your childhood and how that impacted and influenced who you are and where you are today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just want to enter this entire conversation with how wonderful of you to have a platform that I can speak on the level that I'm going to speak today. I never would have fathomed this opportunity because I am always becoming. And so, you know, as I become more, it's like, wow, to be able to recognize it and then share it. It's just a great thing. So thank you. Yeah, my childhood. Well, I haven't thought about myself as a toddler in quite a long time, but it came up today. It's interesting. And I thought, what would I want to say about myself? And I remember the videos that my father took, and I have 5 siblings, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So our household was just, as you can imagine, crazy.
Busy.
I'm number 5 out of 6. So I was the live
Ah,
doll for them.
ah,
I can say with confidence, and I feel actually very good about it. I'm a sensitive person. I'm a sensitive. And I saw that in the videos and growing up and, just the ruckus of siblings and a big family. You can feel ashamed of that, right? It's kind of a topic to tease about. But now at this point in my life, I understand that it's a power, and to stay sensitive and to stay in tune with our best human attributes is critical. So that's what came to my mind. I thought, oh, I remember that one video, and I'm in the playpen. You guys probably don't even know what playpens are. I feel so old. But I was in the playpen, and my siblings would tip it, and they'd make me cry and make me scared, but you could see the look on my face. And well, I'm a sensitive, but I needed to know I was a sensitive, and it was tested many times in my life. And I learned how to be a smart sensitive. That took a lot of years, and it's still work. But I would say I grew up in a lovely area outside of Chicago, west side of Chicago, Elmhurst, Illinois. And we had just freedoms, and I couldn't complain about just the experience. I did go through quite a bit of trauma. My mom left our family when I was 11, so I'm number 5 out of 6. She left all 6 of us, and my father was a hospital administrator. He ran a health system, 13 hospital health system, and he was very busy, as you can imagine, and quite distraught. It was quite abrupt, all of it. And at the time, this was in the 80s, that we didn't really see that a whole lot. We certainly didn't see a father raising, his kids. So went through quite a bit. And I can say now, again, at this point in my life, I understand all of why. And my mom has passed away, so does my father. And I did actually thank my mother for leaving, because she was mentally unstable, and she just would have been a really horrible influence on us. And we were able to be more influenced by my father. And I did have a relationship with her, before her passing, and it was what it could be. That's all I expected. I had to let go a long time ago of the dream of having my mom and, a proper upbringing with her. But we had aunts that came in, and they were very stringent and they got us in order. And so all was good. My father was just a steady. And my father, I think I mentioned when I gave you a little bit on me, is hugely impactful on who I am, how I perceive human beings, my experience here, what legacy should I leave? How do I influence? He was just a very gentle, kind man. Everyone who knew him, even if he just met someone at Walgreens, they all gave him a kiss and, oh, Ed, and, and just, he would treat them like family. Really, there was no difference between any person that he met. He was just a lovely human being, and he carried himself well. I got to see days that I was sick from school. I couldn't stay home. So he would take me along if he drove. Some of the hospitals were in Indiana. So there were hospitals in Chicago, and I drove with him to Indiana, and I watched him with people, and I really got the best example, 100%. But he was this kind of hospital administrator that would walk into a patient's room and sit down with them and say, how is your care? I would probably fall over if I heard that anyone would do that in this day and age because of HIPAA and all the things, all the layers we have now. But so my childhood was emotional. It was scary. It was wonderful. It was all the things. And I, at this point in my life, accept all of it and understand why. And it's great. It's like you can make life work for you when you get things in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Coming back to all of those feelings as a child and your upbringing, feeling emotional and scary and wonderful. How do you think all of those have contributed to your curiosity and your passion for learning?
Yeah. I would say it started with trust. My trust was broken. By the last person you would expect to do that, and that was my mother.
Right.
So that set me well, there was another thought that came, and these things that, I'm so busy in my life. Thank you for allowing me to just review. But I thought when my mom left, I didn't trust my dad. He was a businessman. He was an executive. He was Ivy League trained and working and traveling. And so now I was with my father, and they said there was a period of time where I didn't talk. And so number 5 out of 6, I don't know if you know the book Birth Order. There is a birth order. In some cases, it doesn't matter how many, family or siblings. There's a certain characteristics for the oldest and the youngest and the middle children. And so number 5, I'm the observer. And I have a lot to observe. I have 4 siblings above me and 1 below me. And so I think I was in observation mode. And so it was trust. And then it becomes, I think some of what I had experienced with that pause was getting in tune with myself, my feelings. So I was and I'm sensitive. So it was really me watching and just feeling situations and people. And, my friends were, I still have friends from childhood today that I spent more time at their house than my own sometimes, because I wanted to see what a mother does and how she treats her children. And yeah, so those were the first things. It was really trust and the curiosity is, I'm an analytical thinker. I'm like heavily a right brain, and I'm heavily left brain. I have both like extreme. And so I've learned as I've aged, and age is amazing how it helps you that way. I have had to learn how to utilize both well, and know where both can be not so helpful. So,
and how to balance the two and how to harmonize both of them. Yeah. Yeah. To really exercise your strengths.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In a way that is soul fulfilling. Because I know you and I were talking about this very conventional way that we all move through life. And, knowing you has been very inspiring, and knowing more about your story, because, the life path I have been on, and then most recently, the last 5 years has changed significantly from the identity I associated with previously, which was, as we were talking about, you go to college, you get a nice job, you start a family. And then I kind of went through this awakening, if you will, and later realized I wasn't living in my truth and in my authenticity. And it was making me sick, and it was making me emotional, and it was making me bored, and it was making me all of these things I didn't want to be. And it was just taking me further and further away from myself, away from people and relationships that mattered most to me. And having an opportunity to begin exploring what inspired me and kind of tap into that curiosity and surrender and trust was really such a gift. Certainly not a linear path, but now I look at life very differently, and I really embrace the surprises of life, and I embrace the miracles of life, and I get excited for what my day is going to bring. And, coming back to your experience as a trained nurse, but then also, introducing some of the different modalities that you use for health and wellness, whether that be craniosacral therapy or reiki, and then introducing your clients to functional medicine and neurofeedback. It's like, wow, I've never met anyone like you before. And the expertise that you have and the work and life experience, you combine all of those things, and it's almost like you're a unicorn, Lisa. I know I said to you, you're just incredibly unique, and I'm so excited to share with our listeners the amazing work that you do. So coming back to where I want to be today is, and you have this on your website, which is having faith in the body's miraculous ability to heal and then putting health back into your hands. And then attached to that is what I had just mentioned around this authenticity piece and you wanting to spotlight this message of authenticity is our path. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about your experience, if you could, working in neuroscience and then how that led you to functional medicine and where you are today. And if you could help us kind of connect the dots there, because your path is so unique and so robust. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, wow, that journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. And again, I keep saying this, I apologize, but I can look back and say, I really was fortunate when I got into nursing, when I started in the workforce. The only job that was available was in neuroscience, in neurosurgery and neurology. And, I was naive. It's one of the most difficult areas to work in. So I worked in a trauma ICU that felt like a MASH unit. Like things could go awry very quickly, and we're jumping over each other. And it's literally, like what you see in the shows. And I mean, we could see the helipad from our ICU, and we knew, we were getting some decent cases in, and it was a very, I can say early on. So that sensitive in me, that little girl in me was always there, even though I did heroic things. And on the one hand, pride myself in what I've done and what I endured. But I feel like the greater parts and growth in who I am has happened more recently, how I've put the totality together, which leads me to see that neurofeedback is needed. Quantum medicine is coming. It's here and it's coming. Homeopathy is a vitality quantum medicine that I think doesn't get proper recognition. So, but what gave me this advanced ability is, the inception of where I started. So I was thrown in, and we were drilling into brains at the bedside if needed, and all kinds of things. And even though, at the end of the day, we're exhausted, we might have saved a life and what have you, I still would wonder, that sensitive in me was like, but why are these, the motor vehicle accident obviously is understood to be an accident, but we were getting many patients in with brain hemorrhages. And so then you could even categorize it as, we'd always say a female 40 and, excuse my French, fat. But the 3 Fs are these typical people who would come in, and I was always like, but why? But my brain just went, why? And I felt like, but, what could have been done? This hurts so much to watch this patient go through this. If they survive, 30% of these people with brain hemorrhages don't make it to the hospital. Then it's an extremely long recovery, and the family's distraught. And so that sensitive the child in me was always ringing. And so I had to quiet her, because this is a heroic thing we're doing, and the time is now. And, the adrenaline was high a lot. And so I kind of quieted her, and I had to be, exquisite in my knowledge, exquisite in my ability to read the human body. And in crises, these things have to come together. And so I really enjoyed working there. I learned so much. And I learned just that I think if I were to go any other route other than that was the only job available, I probably wouldn't have had such vastness of, I got to develop the obsession for the brain. It all began then. Either you survive it or you don't. And some of the other medical professionals high in that tight-knit group, they eat their own. And so it's like either you're built for this or you're not. So it's so many things learned there
What makes it so competitive?
You have to know a lot, and you need to know it fast, because it's kind of like jumping on a merry-go-round. It's like the merry-go-round's going round and round, and either you jump on at the right time and you catch the bar and you're on it and you're good, or you go flying off. And so there's no patience for that, because people's lives are on the line. And it's common in critical care in general that those nurses and practitioners that are established, they don't really treat you well coming in. And if you take the hits and you can still keep your, druthers about you and learn what you need to learn and then become part of the machine, then you're good. Some of them still don't appreciate you. If I worked there 30 years, they'd probably still would barely say hello, but and I guess everybody deals with stress how they deal with it. And so those are some of the other parts I had to learn. It wasn't even the patient care. It was like dealing with people under stress, my coworkers, the doctors. I had a neurosurgeon spit in my face. I won't mention his name.
Wow. Where do you think that grit came from for you? How did you tap into that?
Yeah, I was raised with my 3 brothers. So family starts with my 2 sisters, and then I have 2 brothers, me and my brother.
Okay.
So I was a tomboy. I was an athlete. I took the hits, the verbal abuse, all of it. And I actually gave it to, I was part of it. And I was a very fast runner. So, I could get away with some things and literally get away. So,
right.
Yeah. So I tended to challenge myself. And I think this was my internal fight with why my mother would leave me. Right. So as a child, we tend to be self-centered, and we're self-centered in our thinking. And I couldn't break from, it had to be me. Right. I wasn't thinking about, it was my brother David. I just was obsessed with this thought that what mother would leave their children, and it had to be me. So I inherently tested myself and pushed myself to the limits all the time.
So are you saying also perfectionism and overachieving?
Believe it or not the perfectionism in the way that you would think. Overachieving, yes. And wanting to reach the limit because I want to know what it looks like there.
Tell me more about that. Your curiosity around wanting to hit the max, or I guess it's that ultimate I am something. I am right. It's that extreme that just shows you like, boom, you hit it. And so I did it with sports. Pretty much everything. I could throw a football better than most of the guys. They were just like, you're literally one of the guys. Got it.
Of course, I prided myself in that. But
would you say that it's true the neurology department is male dominant, carrying a lot of masculine energy?
At that time, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure. But the doctors were predominantly male. There were a few females. There was actually one female attending at the time there. The rest were males. So it's a rough go. And neurosurgery, my experience in neurosurgery and trauma was at Loyola, and then I did neurology at the Cleveland Clinic, which is it's still the brain, the nervous system, neurological disorders. There were more females involved in the neurology side versus the surgical side, the surgeons, right? But also I have just the utmost respect for the neurologist. I worked so close with the neurosurgeons, and that's a certain personality, and for the most part, and attitude. And they quickly make fun of the neurologists, the neurosurgeons. But when I worked with the neurologists, they are the finest clinicians I know, because they are trained in a way. They are basically nerve whisperers. I mean, they can do a full exam and tell you like exquisitely what's going on. And one of the doctors I worked with, and one of the doctors I worked with, Dr. Sweeney, and I worked with Dr. Letterman, but Sweeney, he would make me watch every patient walk into the office. And based on how they were walking, I was going to tell him the history of what's going on with them.
Oh my goodness.
Just by the way they walk. And there's so much you can tell by that.
So tell us a little bit about neurology and what that is based in. And so when a patient comes in, how do you know to send them to the neurology unit?
Yeah, so I worked in the neurology unit. So anyone who came to us was already referred.
Okay.
But these are the nervous system disorders, muscular disorders. It can be anything, brain, spine. It's usually chronic disease. So the neurosurgery aspect is clearly neurosurgery related to elective surgery and or emergent or traumatic. So that's the difference. It's the chronicity of disease. So you can start off in neurosurgery with, a brain bleed, and then you are recovering, months, years out, and you're seeing a neurologist who follows you. The neurosurgeon's pretty much done.
Yeah.
So the neurologist, it requires the brain and the spine, the nervous system is so mysterious. And I've been obsessed now for 32 years in brain science, and we don't know anything, honestly. It's so mysterious and it's amazing. And that's why I came to functional medicine, because functional medicine says, we are the perfect healing machine. If you can cue the body and the brain to heal itself, it will. If under the right circumstances. Obviously, if it's an emergent thing or, that's a different scenario. But for the most part, living life, you can optimize. And so, but yeah, back to the neurology, it's a very, very difficult unit to work in as well, more emotionally, because these people are, they don't know what's going on with them. When I worked at the Cleveland Clinic, most patients had seen 8 to 10 patients before coming to us. So it's a lot of investigative looking through medical records, and the worst, and it does happen, and I'm assuming it's probably still happening. I'm not in the hospitals now, but some of these patients were given the wrong diagnosis and sent in the wrong direction. Wow. So then you look at it and you go, and so these clinicians were phenomenal. These 2 doctors I worked with, both had been there 30 years each. And they were so skilled at what they did.
They had to have the experience and the intuition.
They were phenomenal at reading the human body on an exam.
So some of these, I suppose, disorders and diseases of the nervous system, why are they so hard to diagnose and track in the body?
It's primarily because of, the nervous system is responsible. It's that quiet happening underneath everything that's literally intersects everything. And actually it's fascia that's innervated with nerves, runs in and around and through everything. So it can express in many different ways in many different places in the body. And and then it depends on the person and the gender, age, their history is so important. And I feel like medicine today barely gives you the time to tell the story. They just want to hear, the key diagnostic things they need to get you on track. And in functional medicine and in homeopathic medicine, holy cow, it's an entire profile. You're looking at the nuances and just the very intricacies of the person to find the answers to what's going on. Functional medicine doctor will sit and listen to you for well over an hour to understand your picture, because you're the expert on you, and you are the only one that can tell the story. We're the ones that are trained to understand your story and translate that to sickness.
So when you came to Cincinnati and you started to work for Dr. Hal Blatman, was this the time that it started to change sort of maybe your belief system or how you saw the world that brought you into more of a functional medicine approach?
Well, I think it's the inception of who I was. So I was a very sensitive child. Like I was actually sensitive to chemicals and stuff. I knew early, like I couldn't wear like lip glosses. It just like made my mouth feel weird. And, it wasn't like I was a peculiar kid or anything. It was just a quiet thing that I kind of sensed and knew. And so I think this was after I had children. My youngest was when I started working with Dr. Blatman, my youngest was 2, and I have 4 kids. So I think it was having children that really might have been the thing that brought me to that place.
And why is that?
Well, I grew up with extended family that did like the whole natural approach. They raised their kids and they had cloth diapers and nursed and all those things. So I was around that, and I went about that myself. So I did natural birth, tub births for 3 of my kids. And that whole process took a lot of going within, so I was on the grid with working, I was doing all the heroic things, and I moved to neurology, and then I was having my first child. And then all of a sudden my life quieted and I needed to go within, which I had not done. I was working, easily 60 hours a week when I was at the Cleveland Clinic, and I was working in a management position along with these 2 doctors. So I think that's where I started to see things differently. And I had some issues with my first child and her birth, and she was sick, very sick for the first 6 months of her life. And that's when I vowed I was going to go natural. And then each natural birth that I had, it was like opening me more and more.
How so?
I almost felt like my ancestors with me.
Interesting.
So I kind of shut the world down, and it was just me and this baby. And one of my brothers is a nurse practitioner in Cleveland, actually, in brain science, by the way. And he was so funny because he came to me and he was like, after my first water birth, he was like, I want to know everything. Tell me everything. And I was like, really? Since when? He's like, what was it like? Because my one sister was like, you're already our hero. We don't know what you're doing, But Chris says to me, he asked me, like, what, I'm serious. What did you feel? And I said, I'll be honest with you. My body did all of it. I did not, how you hear people say, I had to push really hard, and they cue you to do this, breathe this many times and all that. It's not that. You just breathe. And I looked right at him and I was like, I felt like I just buckled up because I was on a ride. The baby triggered the active birth and when the baby crowns, then you do have to do some pushing. But for the most part, it was not me. And I just was the vessel for, the baby to come. And so I hypnotized myself with the next one. I got even better.
You're like, I'm onto something here. Yeah.
But I took myself out of my body for the second. She was the biggest and it was the easiest. And I did not feel pain.
So your first natural birth, how did you prime yourself for that and prepare for that moment? Had you already been doing some, different, maybe, did you have a holistic approach to your health and wellness at that time that made you kind of take this leap of, I want to be in my body. I want to experience this naturally, and just this sort of awareness, because it sounds like to me, you have to have some sort of awareness around the experience that you describe, almost some intentionality.
Yeah. The thing is, I can tell you a character trait of each one of my children based on their birth. And this child is very impatient and just, go. And hers was very quick. So I felt like I couldn't quite prepare. Even I had to hunker down and just, all of it was new. So I was doing what I thought to prepare myself for, but it showed me.
Yeah.
So I think you can't really prepare. Right. You have to experience it. And it's a hard thing. But I think the biggest challenge at that point with that child was, how much pain can I tolerate? It's like you think you have your spectrum in your mind and you're quickly near, oh my God, I'm reaching weight. I'm not even pushing this kid out yet. And I'm already reaching the 10, that's my max. So it's a big mind game. And I think, so I just chalked up a lot of it to the doctor wasn't even there. She came so fast. And the doctor, once he arrived, he was yelling at the nurses. And I looked right at him and I said, this kid had her time up. I felt like I was like a water slide or something. I was like, hey, here we are.
Wow.
So, yeah. But each time it brought me more in tune with myself, more in tune with this amazing healing machine. Because my healing after doing a water birth was far easier, and my energy was there and everything compared to the Pitocin,
Right.
the hospital
Yes.
birth. It was very different. I felt and looked like me.
Wow. So take us through your experience now in functional medicine and what led you to Health in Your Hands. And then also, if you could give us a better understanding around the differences of functional medicine, alternative medicine, holistic medicine, integrative. I think that there's maybe some confusion and around all of these terms and what they mean, and have us kind of flailing out here, and maybe some misinformation, or possibly even misinformed. If you could give your expert advice as to what all of these approaches have and how they bring benefit, that would be wonderful. So let's start with the functional medicine piece.
Well, I don't know, maybe should I start with conventional medicine?
Sure.
Conventional medicine, everybody knows pretty much a system in place that is very well known, I think very effective in infectious disease, emergency, and surgery. Although infectious disease, I would question a little bit considering what we've just come through with since 2020. That needs to be revamped completely because I don't think things were done properly, but that's another story. It's very, very important for those things. Where we have the other medicines is interesting. So they call it alternative. That could really be anything. Alternative, just like a blanket term. Integrative is interesting. So it's still conventional medicine, but they integrate certain things like mindfulness, maybe chiropractics or massage or, those, but it's still conventional medicine. They're willing to tip their hat to other ways being accepted in the healing process. So you mentioned holistic. That is also a term that is, I like traditional. I mean, if we termed these properly, traditional medicine is medicine that conventional medicine offshooted from, because everything that's a drug came from nature. That is traditional medicine. Homeopathy comes from traditional medicine. So all the medicines, those little pilules, the little pellets that you see in the store that kind of sit in the corner, the health food store, those are actually medicine from nature. And you can say, well, conventional medicine took digoxin and used it as a heart medicine, but it's been synthetically made, in a lab. So homeopathy is very powerful stuff because it is a whisper form of what's in nature. So if you were to look at, I'm trying to think which would be a lot of people know Arnica. Arnica montana is a plant in nature, and it's used for pain. So it can be used topically on the skin for pain, but there's actually a remedy that you can take internally, and it's well beyond for pain. It's used for, it's endless. I could go on for a very long time about homeopathy because the medicines are vast. They help so many different things. And all the homeopaths in this country in the early 1900s were MDs. And we had homeopathic colleges and we had homeopathic hospitals. And at that time, the AMA came in and basically put out an ultimatum and said, it's called the divided legacy. If you're an MD, you're either with the AMA or not. And if you associate with any homeopathic MDs, you can no longer be part of the AMA.
Yeah.
This was a medicine that was real in this country. So functional medicine is an interesting piece. It's not, I think conventional medicine in some ways feels it's a competitor because it will reduce the amount of patients, but I don't see it as a competitor. I see it as a complement because chronic disease is rampant in this country and in the world. So if conventional medicine really honed in on their emergencies, their surgeries, they have elective stuff, lots of elective stuff, right? Then the chronic disease should be left to functional medicine. And the functional medicine specialist, because let's face it, conventional medicine doesn't know how to handle chronic disease. They throw
Right.
pills at it.
Right. It's either like treat or remove. And isn't it wild to believe that traditional medicine was not that long ago, 100 years ago? And so, and here we are with the conventional medicine, and like you say, it's the symptoms that we're treating. We're not treating the root cause, which is very concerning.
Exactly what I was going to say is functional medicine believes in root cause, and you can look at any disease process, and really the way if you do the history properly, and that I brought up earlier, spending an hour with a patient only benefits you and your ability to help the patient, because most of the time, if I'm working with an elderly person, they'll have probably 50 symptoms or complaints that they have. If you hit the root cause, you could knock out 40 of them. And a lot of times the gut is the center of all the problems. So gut is heavily focused on with functional medicine, but really it's about honoring the human design. So we are the greatest healing machine. That's the human body. Have you ever cut yourself and not healed? Unless you're diabetic, we always heal, right? So it's without fail. It's always healing us until our death. So what you want to do is to properly see and understand what's going on, and then properly target what that is, and allow it to help the human design to work the way it's supposed to. And then so a lot of what I do in my practice and helping your hands is cueing the human body to correct itself.
I love that.
Self-regulation.
And it's so interesting to just sort of the inverse of what we've been accustomed to now believe with traditional and conventional medicine and the FDA's involvement, right? And so now, because a lot of the traditional medicine isn't regulated in particular ways that kind of satiates the FDA, you probably know way more than this than I do, but getting back to the roots of traditional medicine and herbs and teas, it's just over a swift amount of time, over those 100, give or take years, how quickly we are now accustomed to living a particular way and really feel kind of stuck in our health. And this is why I think it's so beautiful what you do, getting this sort of whole body approach and understanding, like you said, the history, the biology, the nutrition. Can you tell us, and then the neurofeedback piece, which I definitely want to make sure that we talk about. Tell us a little bit about what you do with a client when they come in, and maybe also what are some diseases, conditions that you are seeing prevalent in clients that are coming to see you?
Yeah. Well, so usually, I didn't even tell you the parts about it. I've worked in every hospital in Cleveland before I found that Cleveland Clinic is the place I wanted to be. And I worked in medical ICUs. I've worked in cardiac ICUs. So I have kind of a vast scope. And so I'm not shy to anyone coming in. And I do free consult over the phone, but I'm not about to waste anyone's time or money. So if I can't help someone, I'll try to, send them to someone who who can help them. But typically I get a call, and I would say the majority of people in some way, shape, or form have anxiety. Right? Yeah, and that's not surprising at all with just our experience on this planet. But I do get a fair amount of focus issues, ADHD. Many people have difficulty with their weight. So then food can come up. I do like the neuro ones. I get a lot of concussions. But how I handle that. So this will be like a typical person. So let's just say someone calls and says, they have headache and they have anxiety, and my wife says I'm emotionally dysregulated. I get angry quickly, and all these things. So I do the history. I spent sometimes an hour over the phone. I come to find out this person has had multiple head injuries and was in a motor vehicle accident, most recent, which was like the straw on the camel's back, and now all of a sudden it's like emotionally just hitting 0 to 100. Headaches that are relentless. So living with a headache that is I call it acute unchronic. So there's a low-level headache they're living with all the time, and then they have periodic acute episodes. There's anxiety with it, decreased motivation of just working and living life. And so what I've learned is concussions are prevalent, and it can be a decent, quiet underpinning that is, with time, these other things are now failing. Like, it can even be the same person has, like, I noticed I have trouble finding the right word when I'm talking to someone, or I forget what I was saying, and this is not an elderly person, but it is a good representation of a brain under duress. That's quietly, the brain it can do miraculous things and keep you functional until it can't. And so it kind of shows in these ways.
I know there might be some sort of functional medicine matrix, and I've also heard a timeline and then a go-to-it strategy. Yeah. So if maybe you could kind of take us through some of that, because I think it can be overwhelming to someone who has never experienced someone of your expertise to be able to take us through the history, the diet, the lifestyle, the detoxification, all of these things. And so it can feel overwhelming. Like, okay, how do we simplify what this experience could look like for me? And how do I begin to trust that I'm in the right place?
Well, so the matrix is important. There's lots of, from the Functional Medicine Institute, there's lots of documents to use to do that. But I've found in my practice that I have to trust the process. So I know as a practitioner how to do the history well. I mean, I've just literally done histories forever. And so I garner the history that I need to know whether it's something that I can help with, and then explain to them the process of neurofeedback. And then they, come in and start the process. This is where trust comes in as the brain starts to change and open up and move out of these inefficient electrical patterns it's in. It's different for every person. So there's no standard in this process. That person, that brain that's being measured will, in 10 sessions is usually what I have people do, is enough reminder to the brain to move out of these inefficient patterns it's in and rewire more open brain, more authentically. And then when the person comes in, based on how they're feeling, how they're handling life happening, is where we start to move from there.
Wow, incredible. Only 10 sessions. That's not a lot of time. That's incredible.
And neurofeedback's been around for about 80 years, 85 years in conventional medicine.
Okay.
The newer technologies that I use, 10 is not a lot, but I can tell you, I've honed in on how I work with my skills in this process and getting the person to capitalize on what's happening so that they're empowered and they can step into their life as soon as the brain is free. So the matrix and all that from functional medicine was wonderful, and it helped me when I was only doing nutrition. But now I'm letting the brain lead. And so it's different for each person. And I jump in when I know, like, okay, this is session 6. Usually there's a massive amount that's happening in session 6. Not everybody, because it's totally unique to each person. Now, if this person's having issues with food, they should already be talking about that their relationship with food is changing. And now we're talking about how to actively step in and do the nutritional stuff if they want to do that. But the typical, probably the best patient for me is the concussion with the complex everything, because I pair neurofeedback after 10 of the neurofeedback, then the craniosacral therapy really does a different approach to the nervous system, and it helps to it's like a 1-2 punch. But I never actually explained what neurofeedback is.
Take us through. So, because you said neurofeedback is one of the very first things that you do when you have a new client. Is that correct?
Everything has to do that first, whether you're just coming in for nutrition. So our electrical waveforms are probably one of the most volatile parts of the brain anatomy. So you have brain tissue, you have fluid, cerebral spinal fluid around the brain, you have chemical interactions, and you have electricity. And then you have the cranium. And so there's a lot of different cells all in there, and lymphatics and lots of things we've learned. Because when I started in brain medicine in the 90s, it was the decade of the brain. We thought we knew everything then, but we know so much more now.
Nothing could change after 30 or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
I am who I am at 30. Yeah. All my beliefs, everything.
Yeah. So the system is a monitoring system, and a lot of people think it's doing something to them. They'll wear leads on their ears and on their head is taking a global read of all the brain waveforms. And basically it's monitoring where the waveforms are inefficient or highly resistive, or you could even picture entangles. And basically, you're listening to a set of music. It's about 30 minutes long, and that is composed specifically to make the brain soft.
Is this like a binaural?
It has some of those qualities to it. Actually, the gentleman who designed it, he's award-winning. I mean, it's phenomenal music because it really does trip the brain up, and the brain can't really follow patterns any longer. And so it reaches a vulnerable point. And the software, basically, you'll hear in the music these interruptions as you go. But the interruptions occur only based on where the system's measuring inefficiency. And it's basically saying to the brain, like, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Right. So it takes a bit. The first 5 sessions is really a kind of I call it a breaking up of what is. Then there's like a teeny window where you can have a wobble before the brain actually moves in new form and out of these loops and tangles.
Would you say this is building new neural pathways, or are we not there yet?
Yeah, no, I would say we want to put labels on all of it. We don't know. The brain knows how to wire itself, right? So I'll never be able to give you the truth about what really goes on, but I can tell you that if there's frayed bridges of neuronal bridging, it will improve that connection. It will create new pathways. It'll fortify pathways. It will go around inefficiencies. It will, will find a way.
Interesting.
The problem is when people come in, everyone comes in my door overwhelmed with their symptoms when the system continually reinforces, like, don't continue to fulfill these tangles. The brain opens up and the symptoms start to melt away, because when the brain is wired in open brain fashion, not coiled and hung up and, like even you can picture little tangles, it works far better. And the opposite is true. When it's hunkered down and it's stuck looping and, it's kind of in many cases with many people I see, it's a fight or flight.
Right.
You could almost perceive like a hunkering down because many have PTSD that's kind of underneath everything. And so the brain is affected. The electricity is the most volatile part of the brain and is highly affected by our experience here.
Okay, so then once we do the neurofeedback, and then we might introduce other modalities with the craniosacral therapy, where do we go from there? Then once we have a better understanding of what's happening with the brain and maybe activity and inactivity, and then we have a look at diet, nutrition, detoxification, kind of take us through supplementation, what that might look like, and then how we get the client, you say they start to believe in some of the changes that they're feeling just in their body, maybe even more intuitive and being able to listen to their body and feeling what's going on and what has changed, which is giving hope. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing. And some people don't understand change because they've not had, I've had many people come in and they're like, I've been under duress for so long.
It's their homeostasis.
Well, that's what we're trying to achieve, right? Homeostasis is a balance, that they're not balanced. And so I've had many people come in who've tried all other modalities and they're like, and some have said, I don't even have faith in you. And I'm like, well, you can choose not to work with me. That's perfectly okay. And so it's almost like this taps the master, the brain. And then now that person is open to use the tools they've had that weren't working before, but will work now because the brain's in the right place. It also translates down into the nervous system. So people who have chronic pain, the pain patterns change. It's amazing. It's really, truly amazing. And back in the 80s when I was a hero and started my obsession with the brain, I would never thought that the brain had these abilities. We didn't give the brain enough credit. And humans want to frame and understand everything. And I feel like in doing so, we're missing our ability to trust and perceive.
Yes.
And allow, because some people go, well, I did my first session and isn't that just placebo? And I go, well, first of all, conventional medicine taught us that placebo is bad because sometimes placebo can show that their drugs don't work. That's why it's considered bunk. The truth of the matter is placebo has everything to do with our intrinsic healing machine.
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So you have a New Year's resolution, and even just the thought of it and writing it down on paper that I'm going to start doing this, and this, you already start to feel better.
Yeah, it's the belief. Yes.
Right. But we wouldn't want to shut that down. That should never be perceived as a bad thing unless you want to become a god.
Right. And who cares how we're getting there, placebo or not?
Placebo is 30% of everything. Like it exists, and it's okay. And we should be okay with that. It's not anything like trickery or foolery or it's just, we've not been taught the right thing about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I would say since there's no standard with how I work with each person, the next steps would be, well, if this person wants to do, let's say they've done 10 of cranio, they have the concussive, we'll use the guy example I used. He's more emotionally regulated. He's still getting headaches. Let's just say he's not having the severe ones every once in a while, but maybe he's still got this underlying chronic headache and anxiety is still an issue. And so then we would step into the cranial aspect of things. And starting that process, craniosacral therapy is basically resetting the craniosacral rhythm. And that's a rhythm. So we know our respiratory rhythm is pretty obvious, our heart rhythm. The craniosacral rhythm is driven by cisterns in the brain that produce spinal fluid. It's a very, very slight system. Only medical professionals can do this. And you have to be slight and touch very lightly of the body to feel that system. But resetting it does wonderful things. I mean, it helps with the anxiety aspect. It can help with chronic pain, just a regulation of nervous system. So many people come in with a complexity. And one of the things is like sound sensitivity, light sensitivity. The nervous system feels like it's part of the environment and there's no definition between the environment and the person. And so it kind of returns them back into their skin and they're more contained again. But there's internal alignment aspects of doing cranio that help with specifically brain injury because our cranium is not fused like all professionals, medical professionals were told when we were young and taught. So our cranium is not fused. Bones can be moved. And we have a sphenoid bone behind the nose that actually is not attached. And think about a whiplash injury. These things are moved and disordered. And so now the spinal fluid is not quite bathing the brain like it should. This is a closed system. This is the master of our entire, being. It better be in best working order. And so even the subtleties of change there can improve. So craniosacral therapy is very powerful. And I'm so happy to know that it's more widely accepted in conventional medicine than it used to be. And it was founded by Dio, Dr. Osteopathy. So it's not foolery. Right. I remember the days when chiropractics was not considered a medicine. Right. So I'm hoping we're going to shoot forward into quantum and more the energetic medicine because it is truly, and Reiki's now being more widely accepted. They've done a well-known research piece with Harvard of, doing Reiki before and after surgery and how it improved the surgical, post-surgical healing, how long the person was out at work, all kinds of stuff.
Wow. I can personally attest to craniosacral therapy. I've experienced it myself and it was profound. It was profound. And I'm in a pretty regulated state of being. My experience, I came in just very curious. It was incredible, but it also got my energy moving. I was emotional afterward. And so tears came out of nowhere. I saw colors.
And a lot of that is the fascia. The fascia are our strings, and fascia does not get credit. And in fact, conventional medicine really ignores it because they don't make money in soft tissue. But fascia are what allow us to be animated and gives us the ability to jump and walk and move. But fascia is designed in our survival. So it's very well tapped into fight or flight. And you had emotional release because the fascia, so you've heard the term muscle memory. Well, fascia never forgets. So it needs to, it literally can take in emotions or the state, the human physicality at the moment those emotions are elicited. And so it's waiting for that threat again, because these are the strings that allow us to run from the tiger in the bush, right? That's what our original fight or flight was as human beings. Now we have a sophisticated fight or flight. It's an emotional, right? And many young people coming in with intrusive thoughts and the relentless self-critic, and those can be as damaging. And it just keeps you in this place of this survival. Like the brain's just trying to, it's just doing what it can because it's trying to prepare for that next threat. So yeah, craniosacral is very well known for emotional release and heart opening, energy moving.
I saw green, which is heart chakra.
Circulation that they felt like they didn't have before. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. Lisa, what would you say has to be done to advocate the work that you're doing and to build more awareness? How can we advocate? How can we be advocates of functional medicine? And I think so often we're looking for the quick fix. People aren't feeling well. They have chronic pain. How can I feel better tomorrow? And we take the medication and we take lifelong medication and we're taking all these different cocktails every day. How do we start to embrace more of this idea of functional medicine and the benefits? How are we building awareness?
I'm going to try and hit this one well, because this could be a day-long conversation.
Sure.
So we all have to eat, right? And that is the sacred thing that enters our body from the outside. Our bodies are designed to move on this planet, but I would say because of the nature of where we're at, America is highly chemicalized from every which way you could think. Our water, our air, our food, the pills we take. And so what you put in your body, you need to be very careful what it is. And it seems like work only because we've relied on big agro and these big corporations to feed us. But not that long ago in America, people were growing their own food, and you could at least rely on that it was within your hands and seemed safer. There probably was pollution back then, but not to the degrees it is now. One of the worst pollutions is what they spray on food, directly on food. I mean, I was just talking about pollution in the air and the water and this and that and the other, but we've got pesticides being sprayed right on our food, and that is not good. And humans are not faring well because of that. So in order to take your power back, you really have to look at labels and scrutinize what you're putting in your body. It costs. It always costed more. It should not cost more to eat healthy. It costs even more now, which is just absolutely infuriating, because I think people are just tired and they don't want to do those things. And many people know what to do. So I would say learn about reading labels in general. I mean, I'm about simplicity and try to help people like in the most simplest way so that you don't have to memorize things. But if there's more than 15 ingredients, like if there's 50 ingredients, well, I look at what this is. Like can you get something? Like I was looking at ice cream the other day, 30 ingredients. I couldn't find one that was just, I can make ice cream here with sugar, cream, and ice. And yeah, so, and you just kind of go, all right, well, so the things that are grown in sunlight are the best for you. Those are the ones that are in the form that communicates best with our cellularity. That's why, the vegetarian diet is as good as a statin drug. If you have high cholesterol, there's research. Yeah, you eat a vegetarian diet, that is good or better than a statin. It's better, actually, because there's no side effects, right? So you want to eat things in their natural form, closest to their natural form, the best that you can. Not to say that you're not going to eat box things and all that. But if you're going to choose the processed stuff, you want to be lower on sugars. You want to be more natural sugars. Nothing synthetic is as far as sugars go. But staying away from white bleached anything is always good too, because you don't want bleach in your gut. So it's like we now have to do this labyrinth of how do we eat, right?
Yes, it just makes it so complicated and so time consuming. In the world, to your point earlier, that we live in, it's so fast. It's, there's no slowing down. There's no time. So unless you're very, I'm very curious about all the things we're talking about today, and I'm being proactive in learning more. But even I feel like, gosh, maybe this isn't the right time in my life to take a deep dive into all of these things because I don't have the bandwidth. I just said this to a friend of mine the other day, and it doesn't, sometimes it feels like it's not accessible, or where am I going to get the right information? Or is this website even true? And also, that individualized approach that you talk about, not every body is the same. And so how do I know what's working for my body, and how do I experiment properly? And so it's just, what would you say to that if someone's just feeling of course, if we can come and see you, what a gift that is to have your counsel and your support and your guidance. Amazing, beautiful. We're so grateful to have people like you who are here supporting us in all these amazing ways.
Well, so to the authenticity piece, when you can get in line with observing what my body doesn't like, what my body does like, when I feel my best, when I feel my worst, there's people who obviously know what those things are. I drank too much alcohol, so now I'm taking a hint for it. And so it's about listening to the symptoms. So I think conventional medicine has taught us that we have symptoms, we need to take something to make them go away. But to be honest with you, traditional medicine says, this is information. This is your body telling you that this exists for a reason. It's kind of a messaging of what do I need to do to change? And once you can kind of quiet your life down, because I think authenticity really comes from a pause, getting to know yourself, coming down from the monotony of the world. And that's one of the amazing things that happens in my office, because people have to quiet down in order to get the brain the opportunity to self-regulate. So they also find that they have been living a life of, I was tolerating this person and I deserve better. The brain starts to work better. There's a higher self-preservation. There's now decision trees that are different. And I've had some people outright say, I'm a binge eater and I can't do that anymore. And I've noticed since I've done session number 7 that I don't need food like that. And I see that I shouldn't be doing that anymore. So it's a beautiful thing. It's like when you quiet down and you listen to your body, you can navigate that way. And once you navigate out of, because a lot of people do it because they don't feel well, right? They're of ill health. Once you navigate out of ill health, you can really refine yourself, and then you become more authentic. So it just continues to nurture this new way. I've had people kind of spiritually open completely when they've taken the chemicals out of food, or they've just not put the chemical foods in. So, it's purifying, it's, healing, it's going to, self, it's recognizing like your power. And it's amazing. So it is very different with each person, what path I take and how I take it. And some people I might go into the store and show them how to shop. Like they just get them started with like, this is why you wouldn't eat this yogurt or why you would eat this one or, I don't do a lot of that. I do a lot more of the overall behavioral stuff and just basically, I would say in a nutshell, it's like I pull people out of their madness and into stepping into their life again. It's like whatever it is overwhelming them that brings them to me, this gets sorted out. Their brain's finally moving in a way and they're having clearer thoughts and like, wow, I might not be fully qualified for that job, but now I see I should go ahead and apply for it. And I never would have thought that when I came in with my headaches and my emotional stuff and this and that, and, so the process itself shows. And that's where I'm trusting the process because the brain's really leading the way and the system is just relentless at getting the brain to move into better form. That's the neurofeedback. And then the cranio is a piece and then, nutrition's a piece. And I do help people get off medicines if they get to that point. And all of it is a very just supportive way of just like, hey, we see little lights of health. Okay, let's keep moving in that direction. Oh my gosh, we're seeing more lights of health here. Let's keep moving in that direction. That seemed to work. Continue that. Let's try this. I just helped a young girl. She drives from Dayton. And, I worked with her at a point when she was like more acute, couldn't sleep, fearing death, all these things, right? And there's trauma there. And we got her to a platform and she was doing well. And then she came back and then physically she kind of fell apart. And we just went through probably 4 or 5 weeks of understanding what her body is speaking. And she's young, she's an athlete, she's just kind of high strung, stress thinker, her fascia was disordered. She went and got myofascial release and wow, that was a game changer for her. But we did a lot of homeopathy too, and we had to shut down parts of, this, it's like an orchestra. It's like all these sections playing and it just became a cacophony. And we were trying to bring down the violins and the horns and, and she just left me today. And she was like, I feel good. And she really had no hope in there. And I was like, we're getting there.
And I mean, that's all we really need some days is just some hope that we're headed in the right direction. And then we can just continue to build from there, laying brick by brick, because that's really what it takes. It's not this overnight sort of success that happens with our health. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot too in your services, this, of course, mind, body awareness, healthy meals, healing with proper food choices, and the way to intuitive eating and really listening to our bodies. And I've personally gotten to, so what all the things that you're saying is very resonant because I've gotten to this place. Although I want to continue to take a deeper dive into my health and the foods I'm consuming, et cetera, for me and my family, I at least know the things that nourish and nurture my mind, body, spirit. And so I am able, I think with more clarity now. I do a lot of yoga, which just came into my life a couple of years ago. And so I try to eat more whole foods and really listen to my body and how foods are making me feel. And beyond, feeling overwhelmed and trying to journal everything I eat, I take that pressure off of myself and just say, okay, I know the things I ate today, I'm not feeling good. All right, let's eliminate that versus putting a lot of pressure on myself to now when you are in the pain, because I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2009, and I've experienced flares where I really thought I was dying. I really thought I was dying and it was awful. And I was desperate. I was desperate to feel better. So I understand that piece too.
So many people suffering. I'm just one little business, to kind of trailblaze my way and have all the modalities I have. But I think to myself, wow, it's just unbelievable how many people are suffering. And this conventional system, our primary system that we have, really fails a lot of people. They don't know this piece. But they want to garner everything. And and I believe I'm banking on that human beings will lead the way. And I know that energy medicine is coming, and it is here actually. And most people wouldn't believe it because they would just go, you have a laser? You have a what? But it's okay. It's coming. And it's going to, I think, be a huge, huge impact on human health.
Where would you direct folks if they wanted to learn more? Of course, your website. Can you tell us your website? And we'll put it in the show notes as well. So that would be our first stop. And what is your website, Lisa?
healthinyourhandsllc.com.
Beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes. What are some other resources that you might direct us to? Anything that we talked about today that you think might be a great one-stop shop or a great kind of introduction to what we covered today in the way of nutrition or quantum or energetics?
Well, that's a tough one. So my training comes from the Institute for Functional Medicine, but that's for medical, practitioners. Nutrition wise, well, let's see. I do want to say this. If there's anyone listening who wants to do natural births, Mind Over Labor is a great book. Mind Over Labor. It's a little book, but it's powerful. And it just reminds you that, women were designed to birth children, and it's not a medical emergency. And unfortunately, conventional medicine really leans, most things are medical emergencies until they're not. And so not to fear, if you want to do the natural birth, you should, read a book, a woman who's very gentle about it and it's just honest. And I've given copies out, and I've actually helped coach young girls to do natural birth here and there. And then I would say the nutrition side, there's so many good docs out there. Dr. Mark Hyman is a really good guy to follow. Dr. Perlmutter is another interesting take. He's more brain and body. And then as far as like the quantum stuff, there's so many things out there. I have products from Price International.
Okay.
That's the company that has the quantum products, but there's so many.
Okay. We'll put links to all those in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a Spooky 2 system that's more rife and frequency oriented. There's so many out there. So I can't speak on, too many that I could say like, oh, trust these. But the ones I just mentioned, for sure. My rife technology is frequency technology. And then homeopathy wise, here's the thing. I mean, if there are any moms out there, young moms who just trying to keep their family healthy and all that, Joette Calabrese is phenomenal. Joette Calabrese. She studied with these Indian doctors who have a practice that they see probably 1,200 patients a day.
Oh, wow.
The practice has been in their family for over 100 years. And she traveled and trained with them, and she's here in America. And she teaches classes, and she teaches, like I did a year-long course with her. She is amazing because she gives free information away too. So if you're worried about your gut, you want to homeopathically, like, can I heal my gut? They have gut courses. So you just want to do, gut only. Very friendly, very easy on you if you don't understand, even anatomy and things like that. You don't have to have all that. She wants to fire up the mothers in America and get people well. She's like very, very powerful woman and offering so much to the world.
And this is why we need people like you who are very dedicated and committed to advocate and to bring awareness and to teach us ways in which we can become more educated and where we can be resourced and equipped to make better choices for us and our families, because it really starts there. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, of course. And thank you so much for being on today. Wow, this has been incredible. A few closing questions for you, Lisa. as we are wrapping things up today, when we're on topic of being intentional and living our truth and our authenticity and really listening to our bodies and our higher selves, how do you personally live a life of truth and intention?
I've found that the world right now, for me, I believe we're in a dark age. I believe it is madness at times. And I go to the very elementary of everything. So all my animals communicate with me. I communicate with all my animals. It's funny how people come over and they're like, all your animals talk. The cats talk to me, the dogs talk.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I just take great joy in every small moment. So I make sure I'm grounding. Everyone can do this. Put my feet in the grass, just get the sun on me. I sun gaze when I can. I am more conscious about my food, eating, the hands that cultivated, what I'm eating. Though we readily pay attention to more of the strife of life. And, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to stay in the light. And it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah. And it's just yet another intentional thing. What are we giving our time and attention to? Where are we putting all of our focus and attention? And so start there.
And all of it's an illusion.
Yes.
I can see that even the very things that we scream and stomp our feet and throw stuff about, it's like, come on. Like we don't even know it's an illusion. Like me just saying that right now, people are like, but the truth is none of that matters. That it's all an emotional drive. And I believe we're in a bad place in the world because we're rocking and rolling emotionally. And so it's all over the place. There has to be some grounding. There has to be some understanding, some truth. And nature always gives that. Nature is the control, is the constant. So get out in it and enjoy it and listen to the birds. And the birds always sing every morning. We're always singing. And even sitting against a tree is an amazing thing. Read about trees. So, we think all these things are just there for us and, they do what they do in their cycles and they grow their leaves and they drop them and then blah, 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 blah. But trees we're all live entities and they have a system and families and they take care of each other underground. We don't even know all these things happen. So there's real intelligence out there.
I was just at an event the other day and I heard these children behind me saying that the trees talk to one another and they talk to each other through their roots. And it was so refreshing to hear a 7-year-old say something like that.
It's true. And so, but we can't, those who kind of laugh at the statement are stuck in the monotony.
Yeah.
Because that sounds so foreign to say that. But if you slow down and you pause, and that's much of what happens in my office is people are pausing. They're able to actually incorporate the pause in their life. They can look at things with a better perspective. They can feel better and process something, even if it's something negative. It's really just bringing things down to a micro level where there's a steadiness. Is it the core of the hurricane? It's the quiet, it's the calm. And Bruce Lee said it, and I always bring him up, and people laugh, and then some go, "Who's that?" But he said, "Your power is your calm," and you don't even know the power that it is, because when you find it, the world happens for you. And that's how I became a Reiki master. I didn't pursue that. I didn't pursue homeopathy. It pursued me. And that's a whole different story, but it's because I've been putting myself in a place to allow, to trust, and to just breathe, empty how I feel right now, like just empty it. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying that by any means. But when you start to step into that, if you just allow yourself to try, eventually you start to feel a truth about what's happening, then of course you're addicted because then you want to keep going with it.
Oh, you will never be the same. There's no way to go back. You don't go back. You don't go back. Lisa, thank you. One final question. What does it mean to you to live a consciously inspired life?
It's a very important thing. I feel like it's living a conscious life is getting true with what we are, each one of us. And we are really all connected. So our consciousness communicates. If we get right with our own, it grows. And it's kind of like, that friend that calls us like, I was just thinking about you. How did that happen? It's amazing. And it's a different form of how we were supposed to be here. And we weren't taught. So I just try to nurture it every day. I'm a hiker. I love to hike. I'll do my Reiki mantras. My Reiki mantras are so burned in my brain that I'm doing it and I can listen to something else at the same time, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but you know what I mean? It's like life's still happening.
Right.
I'm able to do it. And so and that's what's helped me empty my mind. And I just trusted. I didn't even know when I was first doing it. I was like, okay, I'm supposed to just keep saying these things and, but I finally dipped down into a well and I was like, oh, okay. And then life happened and I handled it so different. I was like, who is that? That's new. Yeah. Apparently this is working, and then like your children always test you. So that's always
right.
Gonna be there
Every day.
So yeah, if you want to know if you're making progress, that'll happen. So yeah, living a conscious life. I mean, it is my breath, really.
That's beautiful. Thank you. My soul feels so full today in this conversation. So thank you for being our teacher today. And thank you for sharing your light and your love and your connection and your intuition. We appreciate that.
Thank you. I feel honored. I feel like many teachers before me, but I hope that I'm doing something here.
Amazing work in the world, Lisa. Amazing. Well, thank you. So to all of our listeners, if you want to connect with Lisa, the best way to reach out is on your website. Is that right?
Yep.
Is that where everybody can find you?
And my number's there as well. Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. And then folks can book a consultation with you. Is that right? Through your website if they want to learn more.
Sure.
I would encourage you to do that. Connect with Lisa. She'll bring so much benefit and knowledge to your life. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyyinspiredminds.com. If these episodes have you wondering how you can design a life uniquely inspired by you, head on over to modelifestylecoaching.com. That's MODE lifestylecoaching.com and schedule a free call. I'd love to learn more about your deepest desires and how we can get you closer to your authentic life vision and impact. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.